What do you think was the most uncomfortable celebrity interview? A lot of reporters and talk show hosts will push the limit with their questions. Most of the time, they're trying to catch stars in a candid moment or get them to admit some kind of earth-shattering revelation. But this doesn't always work. Some celebrities are just awkward when they're put on the spot, or they don't appreciate the intrusive questions. And this creates a seriously uncomfortable moment that is difficult to watch. So let's get into it. Here are the top 10 celebrities asked humiliating questions during interviews. Number 10. Robert Downey Jr. In 2015, during the publicity tour for Avengers: Age of Ultron, the actor walked out of an interview after being confronted about his past. He was speaking to Channel 4's Krishnan Guru Murthy, who said, "The reason I'm asking you about your past is you've talked in other interviews about your relationship with your father and the role in all of that of the dark periods you went through. I just wondered whether you're free of all that." The actor became noticeably irritated and cut him off, saying, "What are we doing? Are we promoting a movie?" He then looked at someone behind the camera and just walked out. The tension during the interview was so extreme that you could actually tell Robert Downey Jr. wanted to explode, but instead he just took himself out of the situation. Later, he spoke to Howard Stern and said that he didn't have any regrets about walking out of the interview. Quote, "I just wish I'd left sooner. What I have to do in the future is give myself permission to say that is more than likely a parasite and I need to distance myself from this clown. Otherwise, I'm probably going to put hands on somebody." And then there's a real story. So he was clearly more than a little frustrated with that line of questioning. Number 9. Tom Hardy. Back in 2015, the British actor became a viral sensation after he shut down a reporter's inquiry into his sexuality during a press conference at the Toronto International Film Festival. While the first 28 minutes of the press conference were fairly uneventful, things took a turn when a reporter from an LGBT news outlet asked Tom if it was hard for celebrities to talk to the media about their sexuality. He was clearly taken aback by the question, and in response, he asked, "Are you asking me about my sexuality?" To which the reporter says yes. Tom was clearly not happy with the question and looked annoyed. He said, "Why?" before ending the interaction with a blunt "thank you." Days later, the actor sat down with EW and reflected on the moment. He said, "That really annoyed me. It was just the inelegance of being asked in a room full of people." Tom said that he felt the question was asked only to elicit a salacious response. Quote, "Now I'm happy to have a conversation, a discussion, at a reasonable time about anything. I'm confident in my own sexuality and I'm also confident in my own being and talking about any issue you want to talk about, but there is a time and a place for that." Number 8. Rashida Jones. When the actress walked the Screen Actors Guild Awards red carpet in 2015, she was probably not expecting to walk into a very awkward interview that, let's face it, was a little problematic. She was greeted by TNT correspondent Danielle Dembski, who decided to break the ice by complimenting her dress and her glowing skin. She said, "You look amazing, gorgeous. You look like you've just come off of an island or something. You're very tan, very tropical." Rashida was taken aback for a second, paused and said, "I mean, you know, I'm ethnic." If you didn't know, Rashida is the daughter of Quincy Jones, the legendary African-American record producer, and Peggy Lipton, a white actress and former model. Rashida has spoken about her mixed ethnicity many times, especially that interview she did with her sister Khadida for Glamour in 2005, where they discussed their very different experiences of growing up biracial. To be fair, red carpet reporters have to interview many celebrities during award show season, so of course they wouldn't know everything about everyone that they encounter. But for many people, the interview reflected the uncomfortable base level assumption that celebrities are white, and if they happen to be slightly darker, that must mean that they've been on a recent tropical vacation. Very rarely do people consider that they might be another ethnicity. Number 7. Quentin Tarantino. During a press conference for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, a female journalist asked the legendary director something that seemed to set him off. She brought up Margot Robbie's character Sharon Tate and inquired about her lack of lines in the film. She said, "Quentin, you've put Margot Robbie, a very talented actress, in your films. She was with Leonardo DiCaprio in Wolf of Wall Street. She was in I, Tonya, and yet you haven't given her many lines in this movie. I'm guessing that was a very deliberate choice on your part, and I was just wondering why that was. Why don't we hear her speaking very much?" The question would have been an easy one to answer, as there were so many characters in the film, and naturally not all of them could get the same amount of screen time. But Quentin snapped back and refused to answer. He said, "Well, I just reject your hypotheses." Margot seemed to save the moment and jumped right in with a great response about her character, but it's clear that Quentin doesn't take criticism well at all. Most people remember the car crash interview with Krishnan Guru Murthy in 2013, where he ended up verbally berating the British journalist just for suggesting that there's a link between violence on screen and in real life. Number 6. Anne Hathaway. In 2012, the actress was a guest on the Today Show, where she was asked an extremely uncomfortable and inappropriate inappropriate question. At the time, she was on a press tour for Les Miserables, and she was also dealing with a horrifying incident where a photographer crouched down as she got out of a car and took a photo of the view of her skirt. That photo was then sold to tabloid magazines and circulated around the press. But when Hathaway appeared on the show, not only did Matt Lauer bring up the incident, but he also framed it as her fault. He started off the interview by saying, "Nice to see you, seen a lot of you lately," and then tries to play it off like he's talking about her press tour for the film, but Lauer is having none of it. He says, "Let's just get it out of the way. You had a little wardrobe malfunction the other night. What's the lesson learned from something like that? Other than you keep smiling, which you always do." But Anne's response was remarkably graceful. She shut him down by saying, "It was obviously an unfortunate incident. I'm sorry that we live in a culture that commodifies the sexuality of unwilling participants," which brings us back to Les Mis. And just like that, she was able to turn the conversation back onto her movie. Number 7, Jesse Eisenberg. While promoting his 2013 movie Now You See Me, the actor took part in a genuinely uncomfortable interview. He spoke to an entertainment reporter, Romina Puga, and things got awkward in a hurry. The interview started off rough when Romina referred to Jesse's co-star Morgan Freeman as just Freeman, but in response the actor seemed to insult her multiple times. He said, "You are like the carrot top of interviewers." Many people thought he was being particularly condescending when he made Romina participate in a magic trick. When she did something wrong, Jesse made sure to tell her about it sarcastically. She then joked that she was going to start crying, and in response he said, "Cry after the interview is over." The reporter clearly could not believe how badly the interview was going, and eventually she said, "You're such a jerk." When the clip came out, fans were quick to point out the fact that Jesse seemed like a bully. Romina ended up writing about the experience and said, "He performs a pretty decent magic trick. Actually, it's a trick my brother would do to me growing up. I knew how it was done, but at this point I just wanted to go and cry. So I oohed and ahed until it was all over." Number 4, Lindsay Lohan. Even though she visited The Late Show in 2013 with the intention of promoting Scary Movie 5, David Letterman spent the majority of the interview talking about her forthcoming return to rehab. This one was particularly bad because as soon as she sat down, Letterman said the actress looked remarkably well in a condescending tone. He then began asking invasive questions about whether or not she steals things and manages her money responsibly. Despite all of her attempts to change the topic of conversation, the host kept going back to the question of rehab, like when she was going to go, why she was going, and how long she planned to stay there. Eventually, Lindsay became so frustrated and just said that they didn't discuss this in the pre-interview, while asking Letterman to focus on the positive. But even though she was clearly uncomfortable, he once again brought it up, and so by the end of the conversation, Lindsay was literally in tears. The interview resurfaced online last year and has since sparked a wave of backlash against the veteran talk show host, who in all fairness has a pretty problematic history when it comes to making women feel uncomfortable on his show. Number 3, Taylor Swift. While on the red carpet at the Grammys in 2015, the singer was infamously told by Entertainment Tonight's Nancy O'Dell that she was going to be walking home with more than lots of trophies, but also lots of men. For a moment there was only an awkward silence from Taylor, who simply glared at the reporter, but then she quickly brushed it off and answered the question directly, saying, "I'm not going to walk home with any men tonight. I'm going to hang out with my friends and then I go home to the cats. Men get me in trouble," which is absolutely hilarious. Then in another interview, Taylor also shut down a German radio host over a question about whether or not she would settle down and have kids with her current boyfriend Joe Alwyn, to which she responded by saying, "I really do not think men are asked that question when they turn 30, so I'm not going to answer that now." Taylor has also had to clap back at sexist critics who claim that she doesn't write her own music, and over the years she's become one of the celebrities most known for her excellent responses in the face of everyday misogyny. Number 2, Tom Cruise. It might not be as disastrous as his interview with Matt Lauer, but Tom's appearance on 60 Minutes Australia makes for tense and uncomfortable viewing. In June of 2005, he was interviewed by journalist Peter Overton to talk about his Scientology beliefs and Hollywood stardom. During the interview, he was asked a series of questions about his ex-wife Nicole Kidman. The couple divorced in 2001 and had 2 kids together, which became estranged from Nicole after their divorce. Eventually, Tom felt the questions had gone too far and chastised Peter for asking them. He said, "You're stepping over the line now. You're stepping over the line. You know you are." When Overton said he was just asking questions that the public wanted to know, Tom replied, "Peter, you want to know. Take responsibility for what you want to know. Don't say other people. This is a conversation that I'm having with you, right? I'm just telling you right now, okay? Just put your manners back in." Peter then apologized so the interview could continue, but years later in 2020, he said that he didn't regret asking the question. Number 1, Samuel L. Jackson. In 2019, the KTLA reporter Sam Rubin began began an interview with the actor by asking about his recent Super Bowl commercial, but he was actually referring to an ad for the Kia sedan with Lawrence Fishburne. To say that the mix-up ruined the interview would be an absolute understatement. In response, Samuel hit back by saying, "We don't all look alike. We may all be black and famous, but we don't all look alike. You're busted. You're an entertainment reporter, and you don't know the difference between me and Lawrence Fishburne." Rubin apologized on several occasions and tried to steer Samuel onto a discussion about the revival of RoboCop, which was actually the original reason for the interview, but it was way too late. The actor started roasting him live on air for his supposed unprofessionalism. At one point, Rubin said, "Let's talk about RoboCop," to which Samuel said, "Oh hell no, there must be a very short line for your job." He continued to rip into Rubin for his mistake, asking if he would have trouble telling apart his co-stars Gary Oldman and Michael Keaton. He said, "Do some research, make sure you don't confuse them with those other white actors." And so by that point, Samuel made it abundantly clear that the reporter was not going to be able to recover the interview. And that's everyone that we have on the list for today. Please let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll catch you in the next video.